Perfecto. Hi, my name is Sara Navarro here from Cinenete, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, David, about this very interesting film of a real case that it's probably the most documented one in about exorcism. So tell me a little bit about how did this story attracted you, because we've seen quite a lot of stories of exorcisms, and what did you try to apport to the genre and to the story?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And what really attracted me to this story, there were a couple things. One was, all of my films have dealt in some capacity with uh questions about how vulnerable people are treated in society. And this film is in a sense no different. It's really about a woman who was really suffering a lot. She was experiencing a lot of pain. And the film tells the story of this group of people who came together to try to help alleviate some of her suffering. And they happened to be nuns and priests who came together, but they put themselves at great personal risk and spiritual risk and physical risk to try to help her. So that's what really got me emotionally invested in the story. And then you're right that there have been a lot of exorcism films. It's a very popular genre. What fascinated me about this story is that a lot of the things that people have come to associate with exorcism films as like tropes or stereotypes of the exorcism genre, a lot of those things originated in this story. This was the first story where any of that stuff was heard of. So I loved the idea of portraying what portraying the real story of how those tropes or stereotypes uh, um, were created or how they came to be, because this really was the most well documented one that was used as inspiration for so many books and television series and films, et cetera, et cetera.
Totally. Also, tell me a little bit about the dynamic, because I know that Dan and Al has that have a great dynamic, but also I think there's a very interesting factor with the nuns. I think there's like a very close sisterhood that you can perceive in the film, and that it comes to play very interestingly at the almost at the part of the ending of the film. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic.
Yeah, no. The dynamic between Al and Dan's character was kind of inspired by the documentation that we read about the case. And yeah, I mean these sisters, one of the things that I thought a lot about in developing the story and the script is what must it have been like for these poor sisters, for a woman who they believed to be possessed by demons to come and live under their same roof, to live in their convent, to be sleeping a few doors away from them. How terrifying must that have been for these sisters, and how much bravery and courage it would have required from them to participate in these events and try to help this woman. Must have required an enormous amount of courage and bravery. And I wanted to honor that courage and bravery in some way, whether it's through the relationships of the sisters or showing that the sister, we wanted to make sure that each one of the sisters, including the Mother Superior, Patricia Heaton's character, they all have their moment where they can confront this evil force and really exhibit all that courage and bravery.
Totally. Also, another thing that I found interesting of the ritual is that if you see the real story, it was divided in very a couple of cases, couple of rituals, not only one, and they took a lot of
Right.
time. So tell me a little bit
Yes.
about how did you pick the timing for them, and also what was how did you pick those moments that could be scary, but also could be so realistic for the audience? Because I think that's a very particular characteristic of your film.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely tried to keep things as grounded and realistic as possible. We wanted the film to have that type of feel and tone. Um, and the timing of the rituals was interesting because you're right that the actual events took place over a couple of months. So we compressed that timeline a little bit. Had we made this into a mini series, had we made it into like a 10 episode mini series, we definitely could have portrayed that entire time period, a couple of months. But given that we were restricted to, a 90 or 100-minute film, we decided to compress the time period a little bit and tell it in as concise and expedient of a fashion as possible. But we were very careful to make sure that the rituals escalated, that each one escalated in a very particular way from the demonic manifestations and what was happening to Emma. We didn't want it to go from 1 to 10. We wanted it to go from 1 and then 2.5 and then 4 and then 6.5. And, we wanted it to be a gradual incremental escalation.
Totally, I think you get that feeling in the film.
Good.
Also, tell me a little bit about David. There's this thing about the faith always, and I think we're in very dark, scary times, even if we're 100 years from the original
Right.
event. But I think now to talk about faith and the good versus evil kind of delivers another reflections to it. So tell me a little bit about how do you feel about touching this subject in such maybe dark eras, if you want to call it.
Yeah, no, it is a dark, it is definitely a dark era. I know the entire world is in a pretty combustible state. In the United States, we certainly are. It's funny because one of the things that I thought about quite a bit in making this film is that what are the goals of the demons? What are they trying to do? And I always thought of it as the demons are they're trying to cause people to lose their faith. They're trying to divide people. They're trying to sow division amongst the priests and sow division amongst the nuns. They're lying. They're trying to confuse the nuns and the priests. And I can think of a couple of people in the United States who love to divide people and love to lie all the time and love to confuse the issues and throw a lot of misinformation and division out there. So it was it was interesting going through this shooting process, thinking about those kinds of things, trying to figure out, what does this mean to me today in a modern world? And that's kind of where my mind went with it.
That's great. I can think of some people too. For
Yes,
the
yeah,
last
exactly.
question, David, let me tell you or ask you. This is your first experience doing horror. What do you think it's so important to take this kind of genre and talk about the things that we just talked about right now? Because there are serious things that are in.
Oh, it cut out there a little bit. I think I got the question, but yeah, I mean, horror has been a great genre for addressing social issues and science fiction as well. Lots of science fiction films address really important social issues in really creative ways, and some of my favorite horror and sci-fi films are films that do address those kinds of issues in metaphorical, allegorical ways. And it's it's a really creative way of entertaining the audience, but also making them think a little bit differently. You think about the writing of George Orwell, 1984, Animal Farm. His books are really about authoritarianism and society, even though they have this sort of science fiction genre to them. They're really about authoritarianism and society.
That's great. Well, David, thank you so much for the interview. So thank you so much for this talk, and thank you for the film. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon doing another horror film or any other film. We'll be watching you for that while.
Of course. Thank you very much, and nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Goodbye.
Bye bye.